Alright, so today I'd like to talk about what I like to call the tryhard economy. In China, there's this word or concept called Neijuan or Neijuan or something like that. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but I'll have the word in the title and on the thumbnail. And basically, what it means is to quote Google, it's a Chinese term that describes a societal phenomenon characterized by intense, self-defeating competition and a lack of upward mobility, often leading to overwork, stress, and a sense of being trapped in a rat race. Now, we in English we might call this as a rat race or hustle culture or something. But even those words don't quite fully encompass it, because Neijuan, or however you pronounce it, is more all-encompassing than that. It applies to all of life. And I think a really good example of it would be how you see what happens in competitive video games, like World of Warcraft or CSGO or anything where there's a player versus player aspect, like League of Legends or whatever. If you played League of Legends in the early days when it had just first come out, it was actually a pretty casual game. It was fairly new. The Dota already existed, of course, but it was kind of based on that style of gameplay. But nobody was min-maxing and doing all this, autistic edgelord stuff to try and get an advantage, and there wasn't quite so much of a meta game where everyone has some specialized build that counters other builds, But nowadays you see it's pretty much essential that everyone has to abuse the broken characters, abuse the most broken builds, and just try really hard and watch all kinds of YouTube videos on tactics and all this stuff. And I'm not saying this to say that it's like inherently bad to want to get better at a game, or even to want to play like a good viable build. There's nothing wrong with that inherently, but it just sort of causes this problem of a giant tryhard, sort of like a tryhard race to the bottom, if you will. And you go on League of Legends nowadays, and you're gonna get hit with like 20 different Smurfs. 20 different Smurfs in any given game. Well, there's not 20 people in any game of League, but you get the point. Like, you're gonna go up against a ton of Smurfs in League, and it's just gonna be all a bunch of tryhards who are abusing whatever the most broken tactic and most broken character of that current patch version of the game is. I haven't played League in a while, so I don't know what's relevant anymore, but anyone who's played any video game in recent years, any multiplayer one at least, they will pretty much tell you that it is like this. It's a lot of tryhards and sweaties, and another layer onto that is what you're seeing is people are not only trying to get super good, they're starting to use scripts, they're starting to cheat, they're starting to abuse any kind of little macro that can give them a competitive edge, even if it's just a small one. But usually with macros and scripts and auto-aim tools and ESP hacks or whatever, usually it's more than just a slight advantage. Usually it's quite a big advantage, to where, maybe the best player in the world at CSGO, like Shroud can probably beat a low-level cheater, but if you take a person who's at Shroud's level and you face them up against Shroud, except this person has ESP on top of that, then obviously the person with the competitive advantage wins if all other skill level things are put at an even playing field. So this is just something that you see in every aspect of life, and I feel like video games are just kind of like a good example of a microcosm where that's been known to happen. I've seen people, of course, complain about it a ton in the job market. It's basically become so difficult to get a good job these days that people are lying on their interviews just to work at a fucking Wendy's. And imagine having to lie and bolster up your resume just to get a job as a fry cook. 20 years ago, that would have been inconceivable. And not only that, the other aspect of Neijuan or whatever is that it's for diminishing returns, or at least the returns remain the same, or maybe even go down, while the amount of effort required is just exponentially going up because everyone's becoming more of a tryhard. And you know, obviously the most concerning example of this is the current state of the job markets that we see today. You know, people graduating top of their class, getting all kinds of degrees, still not getting any job offers. It's like you go onto the average web development or some kind of programming or cybersecurity job, and you're competing with 500 to 1,000 other applicants on these things, and the only real way that anyone, and many of those applicants have experience that a fresh graduate might not, because they're applying to entry-level jobs now, even though they aren't entry-level candidates, because they have to, because it's that tough to actually get a job these days. And what we're seeing is that the juice just doesn't really feel like it's worth the squeeze anymore, because even if you do get one of these jobs, you know, $50K is not worth what $50K was worth back in 1991. You know, so a lot of these jobs, they just aren't really paying livable wages anymore for the level of expense that you have to go to get there, because in order to just even get to the point where you can qualify for some entry-level coding job, you've got to go through 4 years of college. So that means student debt for a lot of people, or even if you got a full ride, you know, it's still 4 years of your life that you have to spend doing this stuff, and 4 years of your life that you have to spend money on housing. So, you know, usually even if you get a scholarship, there's probably going to be some little expense somewhere along the line, or maybe not even a little one, because just cost of living can get quite expensive sometimes. And so, but now that's not to say that it's like totally hopeless. I don't want to sound just completely black pill or whatever on the matter, because I still think that even with the current level of competition, if you specialize and you focus on one thing, then there still is like enough time in the average person's life to get really good at one skill and then just focus on that. So if you're adamant about anything, you can probably still do it, is the moral of the story. But if you're just kind of like unsure, or you're someone who likes to dabble in lots of things, well, you're going to end up becoming like 70% efficient at something, and you're just not really going to get any opportunities at all, because you're going to be 70% efficient in a whole bunch of things, while someone who chose to specialize and try really hard and cheat and probably lie on their job applications on top of all that, try hard activities, like they're just gonna own you in the marketplace. And the thing is you know, like, I guess on top of that, we have to look at this concept of competition on the bigger scale with these businesses. you know, what incentive do they have to hire a fresh graduate from a first world country? They know that these people are going to be more expensive because they live in higher cost of living areas. So if they have the opportunity to not hire the expensive guy and instead go with offshoring, well, you know, if they choose to do the ethical thing and hire locally, they're just going to be screwed over in the competition of business by someone who chose to go with the cheaper option. So there's just really no reason, unless the quality is that much better, which you could make an argument that it is, but for whatever reason these businesses are choosing to lay off people from first world countries in droves and switch over to offshoring, switch over to automation, which of course is another competitive tryhard advantage. Like, everybody's trying to switch over to AI. Or not switch over to AI, but they're trying to harness it in some way that gives them a competitive edge. And the thing is people were just happier back when we could chill out a little bit. That's sort of the problem that this Neijuan concept presents to us. It's a big rat race. It's a big race to the bottom. I guess if I was to come up with any sort of solution to this problem, it would be to just don't really even try to compete with the lowest denominators, because it's really not going to be worth it or viable. Because if you live in a place that costs $30,000 a year to live, then trying to compete at the same level as someone who lives somewhere where it only costs $2,000 a year to live, they're going to be willing to do a lot more crap for a lot lower pay than you are. So you have to, the only way you can really compete is to specialize in one thing and present yourself as like a specialized sort of boutique option. And I mean, we do see, like, I was watching this video on these like guys who play RuneScape PvP now, and because there's so much monetary incentive in the RuneScape little economy or whatever, these people from Venezuela who have a really bad economy in their home country, it's literally so bad for them. Like, there's so little job and social mobility opportunities for them there that they're unironically they're better off playing RuneScape, collecting RuneScape gold, and selling it on the little black market websites or whatever, than trying to get a job in their home country. That's how bad it is over there. So obviously that is going to promote a certain degree of tryhard that, you know, the average player who's just playing for fun, there's no way. There's no way. You're just playing RuneScape for fun. These people have to do it for their lives. They're playing RuneScape for their lives, and it's, you know, it is kind of sad. Like, I honestly feel for them. The people who go out and just like kill whole bot farms. It's like, yeah, that might be fun for you, but you know what? It's kind of different because you're just playing a game, whereas for them, it's a job. It's an economic opportunity to be able to eat that month. It's a totally different concept, and I hear a lot of people say, oh, well, they should just get jobs. That's not how it works when you're in a war-torn third world country, dude. That's not how it works, my guy. That's just, no. Like, your privilege is speaking, and I don't like to be one of those, oh, chug your privilege guys or whatever people, but, you know, sometimes you do have to look at situation that you're in and realize we kind of have it a lot better. And this, I'm not anti-globalism per se or anything, but one of the problems that globalism has presented for people who live in first world countries is that now we have to compete with people who are willing to do the same things that we're willing to do, but they're willing to do it for like 35 cents an hour. And I definitely feel a certain amount of empathy for those people, but at what point do you have to decide that this becomes a battle of self-preservation? You know what I mean? At what point do you have to decide, no, we can't just let these companies like, you know, whatever tech company, Microsoft, Meta, Facebook, Google, we can't just let them exploit third world labor. In my opinion, it's actually more what these companies are doing is more racist than any anti-globalist argument that you could make, in my opinion, because they're effectively exploiting third world indentured labor. You know, that's kind of a no-go, in my opinion. I'm all in favor of a certain degree of globalism and a certain degree of, like, we should absolutely be looking into multicultural this and that, whatever, but, like, you know, at a certain point you gotta look out for yourself, and you gotta make sure that these companies aren't just able to freely exploit everybody. So that's kind of my take on the whole Neijuan thing, as people are calling it in China. Over here we call it probably like late stage capitalism is another good way to think of it. I mean, that just seems to be where we're at. But, you know, let me know in the comments sections, like, how do you feel about all this stuff? Should globalism be allowed to go totally unchecked, or should companies be forced to try and hire locally? Because, I mean, my thing is, like, these companies are able to grow and get big based off the conditions that first world countries give them the privilege to be in the position to do that in the first place, but then they're not willing to give back to the community that allowed them to rise up in the first place, and they just basically spit in our faces by saying, oh no, US tech graduates are not good enough. You need to start competing with Indians, and you need to be willing to accept lower wages in order to compete. And I just think that's bullshit. I think they're just exploiting indentured servitude, and it's not really doing anyone any favors, in my opinion. But, you know, let me know what you think in the comment section. I know this is a very contentious topic, but it's one that interests me. So, yeah, let me know.